we're rolling? Okay. We're talking about the New Age movement in our study of cults. Next week we will be talking about the subject of Scientology. Now, I want to begin our study today with several quotations. This one is from 1968. It was in the magazine, The U.S. Catholic, in which a Jesuit priest told the readers, and I quote, "In 10 years, people will believe only what they experience. Anything else, they will not believe." And then the Anglican Ralph Inge said, "He who marries the spirit of the age is soon left a widower." And then I've been reading this book by Ross Douthat. I don't know if he's a New York Times columnist. It's called Bad Religion: How We Became a Nation of Heretics. We were just on vacation, and so my idea of a good vacation is getting up in the morning early, getting a shady spot by the pool under a cabana and reading. And so I got to read a lot of this book here. It's very, very interesting, but I've got a couple of quotations that I'd like to read to you. In the 1960s and 70s, though, the heretics carried the day completely. America in those years became more religious, but less traditionally Christian. More supernaturally minded, but less churched. More spiritual in its sentiments, but less pious in its practices. It was a golden age if you wanted to talk about UFOs or crystals, the Kama Sutra or the I Ching. It was a fertile period if you said Christianity but meant fundamentalism or Marxism or the New Age, the gospel of the flower children or the gospel of health and wealth. But amidst all this enthusiasm, all of this hunger for the numinous and transcendent and revolutionary, the message of Christianity itself seemed to have lost its credibility. And then I have one more quote. Every argument, and this is really important as we study the cults, this is really important to remember. Every argument about Christianity is at bottom an argument about the character of Christ himself. And every interpretation of Christian faith begins with an answer to the question Jesus posed to his disciples: "Who do you say that I am?" From Thomas Jefferson to Ralph Waldo Emerson to Joseph Smith, founder of the Mormons, to Mary Baker Eddy, America's famous heretics have always offered their own answers to that question, drawing on a mix of scholarship and supposition to craft alternatives to the Christ of orthodoxy. Anyway, this is a good book. I recommend it. We're talking about the New Age movement. What do you know about the New Age movement? I mean, what pops into your head when I say New Age movement?
Sedona.
Who?
Sedona, Arizona.
Okay, Sedona, Arizona.
Meditation, maybe?
Meditation.
Science.
What?
Science, I think.
Science.
Just think of science.
Okay. Anyone else?
Crystals.
Crystals. Yes, there we go. Crystals. That word comes up again. Anything else? Yeah.
Education.
What?
Education.
Education. Anybody think of fruitcake or nut case?
Fuzzy thinking.
Huh?
Fuzzy thinking.
Fuzzy thinking. Okay. The New Age movement is not really a cult. It's not. In other words, it's not a centralized cult with a well-defined leadership. So With the New Age movement, you're not going to find a denominational headquarters, such as the Mormons do in Salt Lake City. It is titled a movement, and as such, it's just that. And so dealing with the New Age movement is really very problematic because it's very diverse and very complex. Wayne House, in his excellent book, which I have, oh, here it is. The religious charts of sex cults and religious movements says, and I quote, "As soon as you quote someone as being a spokesman for the movement, someone else from either inside or outside the movement will cry foul." So I get the feeling that they don't even agree with what they believe. But then again, neither do Presbyterians or Methodists in the PCUSA or the United Methodist Church.
Would woke be in that?
What's that?
Would woke be in that?
Well, woke is being included in that now, yeah. I think I'm still asleep. I never woke. But there are numerous groups who could fit under the wide umbrella of New Age. Theosophy, Scientology, Ekkanar, the Church Universal and Triumphant, Silva Mind Control. I don't know if any of these are familiar to you, or if you've heard these names, as well as many individuals. For example, there's a person named J.Z. Knight, goes by Judy Zebra. You ever heard that name? You must not read much, but I didn't know about her either until I started researching this. But an American spiritual teacher and author who has appeared on numerous U.S. TV shows such as Larry King and The Merv Griffith Show, and has even been featured in Psychology Today, the magazine. Her teachings have attracted some, let's just call it charitably, wackos from the entertainment world, such as Shirley MacLaine and Linda Evans. Anybody know those names?
I've heard of Shirley MacLaine.
Linda Evans, I think, was on, what was she on, Dynasty or something?
Dallas.
Dallas, okay.
Big Valley before that.
Was that The Big Valley?
Before that.
Okay, well, I'm not a big television person, but yeah, okay, I accept that. She claims to bridge ancient wisdom and the power of consciousness with the latest discoveries in science. If you have ever heard Shirley MacLaine, her ideas are very similar. And she is really cuckoo. MacLaine's ideas were once described as kindergarten metaphysics. You might recall that Shirley MacLaine claimed in her book, I don't know if anybody read Dancing in the Light? I did not. But she claimed that she was the brother of Ramtha in their past Atlantean lives. I believe it.
Wasn't Shirley MacLaine didn't she claim to be some sort of psychic medium or something?
That's it, yeah. And so J.Z. Knight is best known for supposedly channeling the spiritual entity Ramtha. She lives in Washington State and runs a school called the Ramtha School of Enlightenment, if you want to get an education. A Pew Research study from 2018 found that New Age beliefs are common in America, even among people who are highly religious in traditional ways. Included in the researchers' questions was whether people believed that spiritual energy is located in physical things such as trees, mountains, or crystals, reincarnation, astrology, which is the position of stars and planets can affect people's lives, and psychics. All of this is New Age stuff. And so as you can surmise, there are a lot of people out there who call themselves New Age, who we would consider to be, we would use technical, psychological jargon. Their elevator doesn't go to the top floor, so to speak. Their crown box is missing a few crowns. They're a little bit nuts. Although few New Agers actually agree on anything or everything, most New Age groups would agree to 5 core beliefs, and I have them listed there so you don't have. But the first one, one of the best ways to understand the New Age movement is to examine the core beliefs. And so most New Age people would agree to most of them. I don't think you're going to find anybody agreeing on everything. First one is monism. This is the belief that all things are made of essentially the same spiritual substance, and at a certain level are merged into the oneness of all. In monism, man, God, and the world of nature are likened to waves in a single cosmic ocean.
I can't even understand the belief.
If you maybe smoked marijuana or took some acid, I think you probably would get it.
Mushrooms too, don't forget about mushrooms.
It's like if you go to a comedy club, the more you drink, the funnier the stuff gets. Pantheism is number 2. The belief that actually comes from 2 words that are Greek, pan, which is all, and then theos, which is God. The belief that all is God. And so the pantheistic God is impersonal and amoral, as opposed to the Christian God, who is a personal God and a moral God. And then thirdly, reincarnation, the belief in the pre-existence of the soul. That is, it returns to physical existence repeatedly until it achieves the most refined and highest state of the great oneness of the universe. It can also be described as spiritual or cosmic evolution. So you all have been reincarnated into the highest form in the universe, Presbyterians. So, we have many former Baptists here, and but now we're Presbyterians, so okay, that's a joke. Number 4, enlightenment, personal and societal. The belief that through a change of consciousness about one's own divinity and the monistic oneness of all, I don't understand this either, Dottie, but an evolutionary step of spiritual progression can be achieved by an individual and eventually, incrementally, by the collective society. The psychologist Carl Jung, you've probably heard of Carl Jung, it's spelled J-U-N-G, called this the collective consciousness of the human race, which allows us to manipulate energy and matter by our thoughts. That sounds like Joel Osteen, doesn't it? I mean, really. I mean, he could really be New Age. And thereby achieve health and wealth. Now, is Joel Osteen any different from what I just said? That's Joel Osteen, that's Creflo Dollar. By the way, we're going to be doing, after we finish the cults, I got approval to do this. We're going to do a 7-week study starting in September on the prosperity gospel. So, okay. Ron Rhodes, fellow who wrote one of the books on the cults, he writes, "We need such enlightenment because we have succumbed to the illusion of human limitation and finitude. We have forgotten our true divine identity. Only by a transformation of consciousness can we escape this lie and realize our true potential." I mean, he's not writing, that's not what he believes, but that's what the New Agers believe. So, Spiritism is the last one, the last belief that they hold in common. The belief that there are spirits that can be contacted both with dead humans and extraterrestrial sources that provide us with insight into ethics and the meaning of life on Earth. Anybody been talking to Klaatu of the planet Barnard X lately? Yeah, remember Klaatu on the day the Earth stood still?
Yeah.
Big black guy.
The big robot.
Batu Broadnicto.
Amen. Yeah, that's my life verse. You know.
Michael Rennie.
Ron Rhodes adds to this list the five of these. He says eclecticism and New Agers are eclectic in that they draw from various sources of truth, and so they feel equally at home in the Christian Bible. Levi Dowling's The Aquarian Gospel of Jesus, the Christ. The readings of the sleeping prophet Edgar Cayce, and advice from Ramtha, an alleged 35,000-year-old warrior king as channeled through J.Z. Knight. So, one thing that you'll hear New Agers will say, I'm very spiritual. You ever heard that? But I'm not religious. But I'm not Christian. But I'm a very spiritual being. And they sound so spiritual, don't they? Okay, last, another one here is religious syncretism. Now, you know that in the Old Testament, the Hebrews were religious syncretists. They engaged in religious syncretism. They had Yahweh of the Old Testament, and they married that with Baal of the Canaanites, didn't they? Remember one of the things that the kings were always dealing with? The high places. So, religious syncretism, in other words, attempts to combine and synthesize different and sometimes contradictory religious and philosophical teachings. It's like a cosmic sponge. It absorbs the teachings of all the world religions and syncretizes them into one mystical worldview. And often the parts just don't fit. What did Jesus say? I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. You can't come to God through Islam or Mormonism. Go ahead.
So Bob, when you were talking about what do you think about when you think about the New Age, and then you listed these 5 core beliefs, so one of the ones I think about is transcendental meditation and the Maharishi and all that. Where would that fit? Would that be an
Those are,
or spiritualism? Or?
I would say that New Age touches on that, but that's actually belongs to the Hindu-based cults, which you all did not vote on. I don't know that anybody really voted on that. Remember I gave you a chance the first class to vote on what you wanted to do in the next 4 weeks, and that was one of them. So like Hare Krishna and Transcendental Meditation, all of that falls under Hindu-based cults. And there wasn't really much interest in that. Now, if in the future maybe you wanted to do another, maybe 3 or 4 week study on cults or something like that, we could maybe do some of those. It's a fascinating subject, really. I used to see Hare Krishnas at the University of Maryland over 50 years ago. They'd be out in front of the student union, and they were chanting, and they were really strange people.
They're in the airports, too.
What?
Airports.
In the airports.
Yeah.
They're in the Air Force, okay. Yeah, Danny?
Under religious syncretism, isn't that what L. Ron Hubbard tried to do when he dreamed up Scientology?
Well, we'll talk about that next week, but he actually tried to invent his own religion. I think it was kind of on a lark. So, it'd be like I decided I was going to start a religion, Yost-Dentalism or something. And I came up with some strange, beliefs. Would anybody follow me? Well, people follow Ron Hubbard. But people follow Charles Manson. A lot of people follow Jim Jones and drinking the Kool-Aid. I might be able to, she'd follow me. I'd have one person, like, yes.
So would you say a New Age person would say that the God of the Islam belief is the same God as the God of our Christianity?
I think so.
So that would be New Agey?
I think that would be New Agey, yes,
Uh-huh,
it is.
okay.
Now, New Agers don't render exclusive devotion to any one teacher or teaching. They agree that God revealed himself in Jesus Christ, but they also believe that he revealed himself in Muhammad, Buddha, Krishna, and many others. Maybe even Moroni. Remember Moroni, the Mormons? Okay, another one that Ron Rhodes adds is deification of humanity. You can also see the influence of New Age teachings, New Age ideas in the teachings of the prosperity gospel. For example, if you visualize or imagine what you want from God, he will make it true for you. You've heard that before? It's called name it and claim it. Another belief that has made its way into the church is that we should follow our feelings and that our emotions are indicators of truth and guidance. Now, one belief that's popularized by false teachers such as Joel Osteen and Kenneth Copeland, as well as Oprah, is that, and by the way, Oprah is really New Age, is that because we are the children of God, we are mini gods and can obtain anything we want because we are divine in nature. Therefore, some in the church focus on fame and material wealth. A final belief that has influenced the church today is that all roads lead to heaven. There are many spiritual paths to God, and you've heard that, I'm sure. Okay, and then the last one is belief in a coming utopia. They believe that a new world is coming. This utopian world is often described as involving a one-world government, global socialism, and a new age religion. Okay, any questions? That's just the introduction. Background of the New Age movement. This movement comes on the heels of secular humanism, another word that we're familiar with. Comes on the heels of secular humanism, atheism, and nihilistic thought that has affected Western civilization really for the past century and a half. It started in a popular way with Darwinian evolutionary naturalism in the middle of the 19th century. There's a view that man is nothing more than an animal who started in a primordial slime pit that gained traction in the 19th century. If you want to read something about that, an apologetic against that kind of thinking, read G.K. Chesterton's, I can't remember the name of the title. I just read the book. Okay. My memory. Sorry. The Everlasting Man. Okay. Anyway, he writes, about 100 years ago, he's writing an apologetic against that kind of thinking. He was a stalwart Christian writer. He also wrote a great book called Orthodoxy. So if you want to do some great reading. This worldview offers no ultimate hope or destiny for the human race beyond the grave. This left a vacuum of hope, ultimate purpose, and meaning to life, and left the West in a state of despair and open to any philosophy that might deal with the age-old fear of death and the angst of non-existence. I remember back in college, I was introduced to the writings of Jean-Paul Sartre, or as my professor called it, Sartre, which I think is wrong. Is that right? Sartre. It's not Sartre, it's Sartre. But anyway, He was a French existentialist, and I read one of his plays, which is supposedly about our existence here on Earth. The title, No Exit. In other words, you can't get out. We're stuck here. I also read one of his novels in which he deals with the same subject. The title, Nausea. Needless to say, his writing is not really uplifting, to say the least. His principal philosophical work was Being and Nothingness, which is basically what we are. We're nothing. But anyway, you may also have heard of George Orwell. He was kind of the bookend of Jean-Paul Sartre. He wrote Animal Farm, and what else did he write?
1984.
What's that?
1984.
1984, right.
Both
Okay.
are good books.
What's that?
Both of those are good books, though.
Absolutely. I've read them both. The Bible was rejected, which meant that there was no longer a big picture. A big picture. We have a big picture, don't we? A biblical storyline, which culminates in redemption, doesn't it? The big picture gives our human lives purpose and meaning and an ultimate destiny. As Wayne House puts it in his book, meaning and purpose have had to be fabricated out of sheer romantic, existential imagination and willpower. So, historical roots of the New Age movement. It's been frequently said that New Age thought is anything but new. It's as old as the mystery cults of the New Testament times. It's as old as first century Gnosticism. And in fact, it has a lot of Gnostic elements in it. Even before that, it could be seen in the secret doctrine or occultism of ancient Babylon. There's notes back there. But it can be seen in all the great empires of the ancient world. Egyptian, Persian, Greek, and Roman. Did you all get notes?
Not the new ones.
The notes are back there. In the 19th century in the United States, a movement was known as Transcendentalism, which has already come up to this morning. This movement was essentially mystical and existential at its root. It was fueled by the writings of Ralph Waldo Emerson, as well as other famous writers such as Henry David Thoreau. Emerson, by the way, was an ordained minister, and he taught about a mystical oversoul that is the force within all nature and human personality. And may I just say, wouldn't it be neat if Jason, when he gave the benediction this morning, would say, "The force be with you"? No, it wouldn't be too cool. But Emerson believed that this force, or the mystical oversoul, was brought into existence by human consciousness and was therefore subject to it. Now, in 1875, the Theosophical Society was founded in New York City. It draws upon the influences of Neoplatonism, Plato, and occultism, as well as different Asian religions such as Islam, Buddhism, and Hinduism. It is headquartered in India, and out of that society, 3 people, Annie Besant, Guy Ballard, and Alice Bailey, provided the basic concepts of New Age. And Bailey, in her writings, came up with the phrase New Age. That's where the New Age comes from, in her writings. These influences provided the foundation for the Eastern mystics and gurus who came to America in the 1960s and won many converts to their way of thinking. Remember, the Beatles went to India, and all of a sudden they have their music has the sitar in it. Remember the sitar? Remember Ravi Shankar, and some of these guys. These became household names. Sigmund Freud and his friend Carl Jung Jung again, provided the psychological base for New Age thought. Now, does anybody really listen to Freud anymore? But Freudian psychology was basically atheistic and naturalistic. As Wayne House writes, Freud represented ultimate metaphysical hopelessness in his naturalism. Jung believed in some kind of irrational, mystical hope that humans can somehow exist beyond the grave in a metaphysical framework. Huh? I don't get it, do you? You know, a lot of what I'm saying probably doesn't make much sense, does it? Well, it doesn't make much sense to me either. But let's look at contemporary expressions of the New Age movement. You remember, most of you lived through the 1950s, and many of you did. It gave birth to, you remember the Beat generation and the Bohemian writers that influenced it? You might be old enough as I am. Of course, you might not be old enough. I know you weren't even born yet, but there was a TV show that began airing in 1959, The Many Lives of Dobie Gillis, which portrayed the Beat generation and portrayed in kind of stereotypical form the beatnik. And so you might remember Bob Denver went on, remember he was the beatnik in that show. He went on to Maynard Krebs, yeah. He went on to more intellectual television fare, Gilligan's Island. I'm joking. I don't think that's intellectual. Gosh, I mean, some of the stuff that I watched, that I can't believe that I watched, like Gilligan's Island. They really had a lot of stuff for being on just cooking stuff off the boat, didn't they? And then Mr. Ed, I Dream of Jeannie. No wonder I'm so messed up. I watched all this stuff when I was growing up. Probably some of you did. How many of you watched any of this stuff? Okay, the rest of you are lying, but...
It might help your confusion if you got a haircut, Bob.
There you go. It might help. Well, I'm losing it up here, so I'm trying
I'm
to...
in back there. I'm in the ponytail.
Anyway, I remember back in college, I had a modern novel class, and when I read Jack Kerouac, remember him, his novel On the Road? It is a novel about the quest for meaning. The Beat movement foreshadowed the hippie counterculture of the 1960s and its emphasis on rejecting the norms of society. And so Christianity was seen as the established religion and therefore targeted as something to rebel against. You recall the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who brought his teaching of transcendental meditation to the United States. He was virtually unknown until the Beatles began to promote his ideas. And by the way, you might remember the album My Sweet Lord. No, All Things Must Pass, but had My Sweet Lord on the album. But George Harrison actually later joined the Hare Krishnas, and he began to promote the belief in reincarnation and other Eastern religions through his music. And so you might recall his song, My Sweet Lord, was about 1971 maybe? Yeah. Made a reference to both Krishna and Christ as if they were both equal. So if he was reincarnated, he was a Beatle, and then he was probably reincarnated into a lower life form, probably Grand Funk Railroad or something. In the 1960s, the musical Hair became hugely popular. It produced a monster hit song by the Fifth Dimension that had an astrological theme. And it announced, "This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius." The musical advocated Indian Kama Sutra, rebellion against the establishment, and relative ethics as the solution to social strife and racial hatred. And so hair and Woodstock became the cultural symbols of a generation that believed that Christianity does not have the answers to life's basic questions. When the Vietnam War ended, and by the way, I just started Ken Burns. I saw the first installment, Ken Burns Vietnam.
It's excellent.
Yeah, it's really good. I watched the World War II with my oldest son, and I've got some of the other ones. I saw the Civil War, and anyway, it's really well worth watching. But when the Vietnam War ended in the mid-1970s, many of the countercultural baby boomers cut their hair and donned business suits and entered the business world and politics. I remember buying this book. We had a far left bookstore off of campus. It was called the Joint Possession or something. The Joint, I think, had a double meaning, double entendre. But anyway, I bought this book, Do It, by Jerry Rubin. Remember Jerry Rubin was one of the Chicago Seven? And I'll never forget reading that book and the vitriol that he had for American society. And then how in the 1980s he was transformed from a revolutionary to a yuppie. And I think he was working on Wall Street or something. Jerry Rubin. He and Abbie Hoffman were some of the countercultural heroes back when I was in college. But he and many others of his generation held on to their New Age ideas. Before long, it wasn't uncommon for prominent figures to express New Age ideas. For example, Nancy Reagan disclosed in 1988 that she had been consulting an astrologist, fortune teller, to plan Ronnie's itinerary. Should we push the button for the bomb or not? Scary thought, isn't it? In the next decade, Hillary Rodham Clinton, you may have heard of her. She was the First Lady. She spoke of consulting the dead spirit of former First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. You remember that? And people thought she was a little loopy. Some people still do. Arthur Marilyn Ferguson published an influential book in 1980 titled The Aquarian Controversy that demonstrated how many aspects of our culture are converging into a conspiracy. Gosh, we have a lot of conspiracies today, don't we? A conspiracy of shared values that include meditation and a sense of the oneness of all. She wrote, and I quote, "We have a profound paradigm shift about the whole earth. We know it now as a jewel in space, a fragile water planet. And we have seen that it has no natural borders. It is not the globe of our school days with its many colored nations." And so this book, The Aquarian Conspiracy, became a manifesto for many in the New Age movement and was often used as a sociological textbook on college campuses. The 1980s and 1990s popularized much New Age thought in the entertainment industry, such as the pantheistic theme of the light and dark side of the Force. Remember the Star Wars movies? And the Star Trek television series of the 1960s. Anybody remember Star Trek? I used to love Star Trek. And "the Force is with you" became a very popular saying after that first Star Wars movie. There were occultic mysticism and magic in the films of Willow. Anybody see Willow? And The Dark Crystal. New Age magazines and newsletters began to emerge by the dozens, such as New Age Journal, Yoga Journal, New Realities, Whole Life Times, and Body, Mind, and Spirit. Psychics and trance channelers became almost household names. Franchise bookstores such as Barnes & Noble's featured New Age sections. And major music stores featured New Age music. You ever seen New Age music? Many entertainers have been outspoken in expressing various Eastern and New Age beliefs, such as Richard Chamberlain, remember him? Dr. Kildare, Helen Reddy, Tina Turner, who just recently died, David Carradine, remember David Carradine, Kung Fu? Marsha Mason, remember her? She was an actress, The Goodbye Girl. Mike Farrell, remember, who was Mike Farrell? Anybody know?
He was on MASH.
BJ, he was BJ on MASH. Priscilla Presley, Kirstie Alley, Cheers. John Travolta, who I think, we would identify with Scientology, and Linda Evans, to name just a few. At an Oscar Awards ceremony of the Motion Pictures Academy in 1993, you might recall Richard Gere led a collective meditation. Do you remember, anybody watch that? In which he claimed to be beaming energy toward the Tibetans and the Dalai Lama, who is looked up to as a spiritual leader by many New Agers. Anybody watch the Oscars? No, anybody see that? Okay. It's no surprise that Shirley MacLaine is the most prominent entertainer in the movement. Her book and TV miniseries, Out on a Limb, documented her spiritual conversion to New Age thinking. And so you can see New Age thought expressed in many ways, including cartoons on television, children's movies. For example, Captain Planet. I don't know if anybody recognizes these, but He-Man, Masters of the Universe, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I've got a picture of my youngest son. He was in his Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles outfit, They were really big. And don't think that they don't influence children. Power Rangers, The Lion King, and Pocahontas. And you might also have seen psychic hotlines promoted by different celebrities. Remember that? All of this is New Age. We might call it nonsense. All right, theological beliefs of the New Age movement. There are many theological beliefs of the New Age movement that are expressly forbidden or contradicted by Scripture. Does anybody have a regular Bible that could look up something for me and read? Okay, go ahead, Roger. Deuteronomy 8, 9. Anyway, for example, one belief is that there are many spirits in the astral plane that are willing to converse with humans. This is accomplished when the body is surrendered over to the entity by vacating the mind and the will and going into a self-induced trance. These spirits might not even be those of human beings. What do you think they could be? Demons? Animals? It's been suggested aliens from other planets. Obviously, the Bible prohibits spiritism of any kind. Nobody is allowed to contact a disincarnate spirit directly or go through a medium. And so you might recall when Saul went to the medium of the witch at Endor and tried to raise up Samuel. So go ahead, read verse 9, and I'll tell you when to stop.
A land where bread will not be scarce, and you will lack nothing. A land where the rocks are iron, and you can dig copper out of the hills.
Your verse 9?
Yeah.
Okay. Deuteronomy 18.
But remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the ability to produce wealth, and so confirms his covenant, which he swore to your forefathers as it is today.
Keep going. What verse are you on?
This is 19.
No, 9.
We did 9.
Okay, 10.
Okay. you want-
Chapter 18.
You're in chapter 18.
Oh, chapter 18. I thought it said 8.
Didn't sound familiar.
Channel it.
Okay,
Chapter 18 what?
verse 9.
Verse 9, okay. When you enter the land the Lord your God is giving you, do not learn to initiate the detestable ways of the humans there, of the nations there.
Keep going.
Let no one be found among you who sacrifices his son or daughter in the fire, who practices divination or sorcery, interprets omens, engages in witchcraft, or casts spells, or who is a medium, or spiritist, or who consults the dead. Anyone who does these things is detestable to the Lord. And because of these detestable practices, the Lord your God will drive out those nations before you.
Thank you. That's good enough. Okay, that's Deuteronomy 18, 9 through 22. There's also in Leviticus, that it deals with this as well as homosexual behavior, sacrificing your children in the fire. Of course, we're told that this doesn't really isn't applicable to us today. That the homosexual lifestyle is perfectly acceptable. Okay. Let's look at theological beliefs, doctrine of God, the Trinity. Most New Agers hold the monistic view that all matter and energy are of the same basic substance. This substance is spirit. All that exists, matter, energy, space, and spirits, is divine. One of the New Age poets, a guy by the name of Gary Snyder, wrote a poem, I pledge allegiance to the soil, one ecosystem in diversity under the sun, with joyful impenetration for all.
Is that a joke?
Gary Snyder. I'm not making this. I didn't
That's
write.
real?
I didn't write the poem. I'm not a poet.
It's real, you're not joking.
I'm not joking.
Real cool.
That's real.
Holy cow.
This whole thing. I mean, I know you're looking at me like he's making this up, isn't he? Yeah.
In Virginia Beach, we're from Norfolk, but Virginia Beach, right on the ocean front, a prime piece of property. The Edgar Casey Foundation
Yeah.
is there, and they've got the Center for Research and Enlightenment. And it hosts several events a year that bring in quite the group.
Thank you. Doctrine of Jesus Christ. The person of Jesus Christ is also defined differently by the New Age teachers. One popular approach is to see him as having been a master of Eastern mysticism by virtue of the fact that Jesus traveled to India during the years of his youth and young manhood. Of course, that's not in the Bible, right? According to one of the standard works of the New Age movement, The Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ by Leo Dowling, I'm not making this up. It came out in 1908. According to this book, Jesus traveled to India, Persia, Assyria, and Tibet. The book was supposedly transcribed from the text of a book from the Akashic Records, a compendium of mystical knowledge encoded in non-physical plane of existence. The title of the book comes from the practice in astrology of naming time periods in terms of constellations and their dominant positions in the sky. According to the book and also the song by the Fifth Dimension, the age of Aquarius is approaching. Okay, you remember the lyrics to the song? Harmony and understanding, sympathy and trust abounding, No more falsehoods or derisions, golden living dreams of visions, mystic crystal revelation, and the mind's true liberation. Aquarius. I had my picture taken with the Fifth Dimension back in 1994. That was the night I went to a fundraiser for the Western Piedmont Symphony Orchestra, and it was January 22nd, 1994. Was supposed to go up there and meet the band and have my picture taken with them, and I brought my oldest son, and I met this remarkable woman. It wasn't Florence LaRue, but it was Tess, and 7 weeks later we got married. But I credit the Fifth Dimension for bringing us together, so I'm not. I do have some fond memories of the Fifth Dimension, but the doctrine of sin and man, okay? Evil does not exist according to New Age theology. One should not resist evil. According to Shirley MacLaine's book, Dancing in the Light, a spirit named John said through a trance channeler, "You must not resist what you call evil." And I wonder how you would deal with someone like Charles Manson or Adolf Hitler. You don't resist them? Goodness gracious. They believe that good and evil come from the same source. So what we mistakenly consider evil is actually good. And Wayne House gives some examples of this. One of them is voodoo, which you're probably familiar with. Now, the Bible also condemns occultic practices. Good and evil are not one. They are diametrically opposite, polar opposites. Yeah.
So if they think the good and evil both come from a source, then that means there's some kind of God or the force or something. There's something else that's above us, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm not sure I really understand what they believe. I'm trying to teach you what they believe, but I'm not sure I really understand it.
It'd be different manifestations of the universal spirit.
Yeah.
Just as you are one such manifestation.
Yeah. Anyway.
You got that, Mark?
Yes, I do.
They also have a belief in the doctrine of rewards and punishments. They believe that the early church subverted the truth of reincarnation and kept it hidden from the Western world, ignorant of the reality of multiple lives. And when I read some stuff like this, you can read the Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown, which is just hogwash, by the way. You know anything about the Bible, he just twists everything. No matter what you might read in works of fiction such as the Da Vinci Code, neither the Jewish scribes nor the early church fathers hid early texts. They did not do that. Certain books were rejected by the early church because they were inconsistent with the rest of Scripture and contained doctrines that Jesus and the apostles never taught. In fact, some of the early New Testament letters and the Gospel of John were actually written in response to one of the early heresies, which is called Gnosticism, which was a spiritual forebear of the New Age movement. There are no New Testament or early Christian manuscripts from either the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd centuries that teach reincarnation. Now, interesting and distinctive beliefs. Since there is no ultimate creator who is the final court of appeal in matters of right and wrong, every person is left to decide for himself what is acceptable behavior. And so we could say that our theme song would be what the Isley Brothers sang, "It's your thing, do what you want to do. I can't tell you who to sock it to." Remember, it's your thing, okay? And so, you can do what you want. It's your thing. Do your thing, baby, right? That's New Age. Even murder can be seen as acceptable in some circumstances by some people in the New Age movement. According to a trance channeler, J.Z. Knight on ABC's News 2020 program back in 1987. He says, if you believe you're going to be reincarnated and that you are going to live again, how can murder be wrong? And so if murder can be justified on a metaphysical basis, the doctrine of reincarnation, this allows for anarchy, complete anarchy, in the affairs of men. And so, you know, it's really not wrong for me to murder somebody in this class, if you give me a hard time, for example, Lawrence. Or to abort a baby that might be born with Down syndrome, or maybe is just an inconvenience to the mother.
Some folks just need to kill it.
I didn't say that. He
No,
said
they
some
would,
folks
they
just
would.
need killing,
They would say that, right?
but I didn't say that. Secondly, interesting belief, our planet is about to ascend to a higher level of evolutionary positioning, whatever that means. Only a certain percentage of humanity will be willing and able to accept the necessary changes needed to affect the Earth's advancement. People who resist the process and remain skeptical of this advancement will be eradicated. The entire human species will then take the next step in evolution and realize its own divinity through self-realization and self-actualization. Experience, in other words. This transformation is already underway. Wow. Thirdly, and finally, crystals can be used as a vehicle for our own energy that will allow or cause our desires to come to pass. According to the owner of Stones of the Spirit, it's a rock shop in Knoxville, Tennessee. It's not rock music, but actual rocks. Many customers have come into our store seeking Moldavite. According to a Pew Research Center survey, 42% of Americans believe that spiritual energy can be harnessed from physical objects, such as crystals. And this is just one more trend in the direction of New Age practices, such as astrology and psychic powers. And so the use of crystals for the purpose of changing either the future or present circumstances, especially when it's used with incantations, is a clear violation of the biblical ban on casting spells, as Roger read earlier. Yeah?
Very quickly, Bob, when I lived in Venezuela, my roommate there was a New Ager, and he would keep his razor blades next to a crystal, and he built a little pyramid over it, because that also draws in the astral forces or whatever, and he never bought a razor blade, because they were always self-sharpened when they were underneath that, so he said. That gives you an insight into the mind of some of these folks.
Well, I don't know if any of this makes sense to you, but this is what people are thinking today. And, you know, when someone says, well, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual, this is part of what, you know, this is part of the background of that. So, any thoughts? Or I'm done. Yes.
Is yoga considered?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Are death cults in this?
Death cults. Oh gosh, I don't know anything about death cults. What is a death cult?
I'm not sure.
Well, neither am I.
But so I was just talking with Carol about this, that what I've been seeing a lot of in the sci-fi movies has been the going towards, we're going to genetically modify viruses so that we can kill off a lot of humans because humans are bad for this planet.
Some of them are.
And so that's what's been going on. If you look at the movies nowadays, the themes are there, and now they've become reality. In my opinion, they've become reality. That we have the genetically modified viruses to kill off humans. And,
I don't know much about that.
Okay, all right.
Bob Van Hook might know more about that than I do, but he's a medical doctor.
so am I.
Yeah.
But,
Well, I don't know. I'm totally ignorant.
okay.
I'm ignorant on a lot of things. Dottie?
All I can think of is Satan did more than messing with Adam and Eve. He twisted the minds of everybody from then on.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can figure out, that your brain was just twisted.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
don't
I
know
know.
the first person that did it.
Yeah. Do we have any other medical doctors in here that don't know anything? Go ahead, Beth.
Yeah, just one thing, you know, we have this, environmentalist movement.
Yes.
Where it seems like there's more emphasis on the life of animals and all that than of the humans.
Yeah.
And is that the New Age influence?
I don't know, but I was doing some reading, and you know, recycling and stuff like that was really associated with Unitarians. I recycle, and I believe that we are stewards of the environment, that Christians, thoughtful Christians, should recycle and should be mindful. You know, we should not be wasteful. So I really think that it's probably linked, but there are many Christians that believe in ecology. Francis Schaeffer even wrote a book on ecology.
Well, I was thinking more of, they put more emphasis on saving baby whales than saving baby humans.
That's true.
And also saving owls and forests opposed to, you know, doing things to better the human life.
Well, that is deplorable, and I have some very, very strong opinions about abortion. I believe that it's murder.
Right.
Amen.
Huh?
Yeah.
So, you know, if you're going to allow abortion, we should have post-birth abortions up to age 18. I'm joking. Okay, thank you very much. Next week's Scientology, and may the force be with you.